Hey there, I'm Rye Myers, your Broadway and Entertainment BFF, and you're watching Live with Rye. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Live with Rye. I'm so happy you're tuning in. I have a huge favor to ask of you before you begin. Hit that subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube, and subscribe to my YouTube channel so you never miss an episode of Live with Rye. You get notified every time I go live or anytime I post a new video, and you're also helping me out as well. So if you want exclusive access to anytime I go live or post a video, hit that subscribe button below and subscribe to my YouTube channel. I really appreciate it. And hey, listen, I love being able to be your Broadway and Entertainment BFF, bringing you exciting content and interviews with people across the Broadway, entertainment, and pop culture spectrum. But I can't do that without your help. So if you are so inclined, I'd love if you'd consider going to ridethenewsguy.com/donate. Again, ridethenewsguy.com/donate, and just donating whatever you can if you are able. Or you can scan this nifty little QR code as well if you're on a computer or a laptop, which will take you to the website as well. It means so much to me, and I would really appreciate it. You'll also see it scrolling across the bottom of the screen throughout the show, so you can donate throughout the show as well. All right, and with that, let's welcome my very special guest. I'm so happy to have her on. You may remember I was on her show a few months ago. She is just so wonderful. Please help me welcome the wonderfully brilliant Lauren Van Hemert. Hi, Lauren.
Hi, how are you? Thank you for having me.
You're so welcome. Thank you so much for doing this.
This is exciting. Tables are turned a little bit. It's kind of weird, but fun.
I know, isn't it? You talk about the tables are turning. I felt that same way when I was on your show a few months ago. It was like, this is weird. It's the opposite side.
It's good though. It's all good.
It is. So let's get started. Take me back from the beginning, which is always a great place to start. Where did the original idea come from to create the outlet Beltline to Broadway, which was formerly RDU On Stage?
So I was with Broadway World. I was a contributing regional editor for Broadway World here in Raleigh. We have a pretty dynamic theater community here. And at the time, Broadway World was really limited to covering a couple of community theaters and the big touring houses, which is our Durham Performing Arts Center, big touring facility. And so when I came onto Broadway World, I was like, well, what else am I going to do? What else is there? Not realizing the vibrancy of this area and its theater community. And so I started forming relationships with I think at last count, there's about 65 theaters in the Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill area, which for an area our size is a lot. And so I started forming relationships with a lot of the artistic directors, a lot of the artists, and having these amazing conversations. And about a year after I had started with Broadway World, I thought, I really want to start putting these conversations out there so everybody can hear them, not just me, talking about, what makes artists tick and what makes producing artistic directors pick the plays that we get to see each season, what goes into a season. And so I started the podcast, and RDU On Stage it all happened at the same time. I guess 3 years ago, and then a few months ago we rebranded. We became Beltline to Broadway because during the pandemic, whereas up until COVID hit and shut everything down, I was covering tours here, kind of in my bubble. I'd review shows, I'd interview people, but it was all here. And I had a few people from outside the area who were watching and listening, but it wasn't until the pandemic that all of a sudden the world kind of got small, because people all over were watching, and I was getting questions like, what does RDU stand for? RDU is Raleigh Durham. It's our airport code. But he knew that outside this area. And so it became Beltline to Broadway. We have a Beltline that goes around the city here. And so it was kind of a nod to our Beltline, as well as kind of casting a wider net for our New York friends and our international friends and the friends we've kind of made from all over the place. Theater's a small community, right? Right? Everybody's, theater fans are theater fans no matter where they are. So.
Yes, they are. And it's a very small community indeed. So I think that's great that you created it, and then to name it cleverly the Beltline to Broadway. But yes, it's a very small community indeed, and we are a passionate bunch. We certainly are Broadway fans.
Yes. And, I'm always reminded of it. I guess it was a week or two ago, I had a reunion with the original off-Broadway cast from Godspell. And Peggy Gordon said, well, I'm going to post this on my YouTube channel. And I was like, okay, great. I've gotten so much response just from that, realizing that it really is a small community. It really is a small community. So it's been really fun. And I love theater. I can't think of anything better to talk about. So
I agree. Not to get too far off course, but you mentioned the Godspell reunion with the original off-Broadway cast. What was that like? That was incredible that you got to do that. What a great show. Iconic still to this day. What was that like?
It was pretty incredible. Carol Desgier wrote Stephen Schwartz's biography, Defying Gravity, and she wrote another book called The Godspell Experience. And we had, I guess 2 seasons ago, 2 different community theaters here. One was doing Godspell, one was doing Pippin. So I called Carol and I was like, hey, I'd like to have you on my podcast to talk about Pippin and Godspell. And so we teased out 2 different podcast episodes and kind of became friends out of that. And so she had reached out to me and said, it's the 50th anniversary of Godspell. A lot of the original people want to get together and have, there were a lot of reunion shows and a lot of big events happening, but they were looking for kind of a smaller event where they could just connect and be together prior to this week of crazy events, Stars in the House, all these other things that they were doing. And so they asked me to host it. And I was really glad that Carol and I had done that original interview on Godspell a couple of years ago. Mm-hmm. I felt ready. I there's a lot of research that goes into all of these kind of things, but they were amazing and they were so generous. And I received an email, lots of emails from them afterwards. But one of the emails said, you're now part of the Godspell family. And I thought, oh, for someone who doesn't sing or dance or act, I'm in.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Oh, you're part of their troupe, their Godspell troupe.
I feel like I'm part of the troupe. And here's the thing. This is crazy. I don't get starstruck too often because I've come to realize that the actors that I have a chance to chat with are just people like me, and they have lives, and some of them are walking their dogs when they talk to me. I mean, it's really lovely. But Maria from Sesame Street, she was in that original off-Broadway production, Sonia Manzano. And so
really?
She was with me on that show, and I was like, okay, try to keep it together, Lauren. But it was a starstruck moment just seeing her appear on the screen, kind of going, look, there she is. It's Maria.
Oh my God.
His name is really funny.
Yeah, well, I mean, talk about a flashback. I mean, a throwback. I remember the character Maria. I mean, growing up when I would watch the shows, I would watch Sesame Street on tape. I did not know she was in that original off-Broadway cast of Godspell. Wow.
Well, apparently she was in the Carnegie Mellon group that did Godspell originally before Stephen Schwartz ever became involved. And then somebody from Sesame Street had seen her in Godspell. And so she went from Godspell to Sesame Street. And that was it. So, yeah.
That is pretty.
You got to read that book. Put that book on your reading list. The Godspell Experience and Defying Gravity. If you haven't read it, they're really good books.
I will. I will add both of them. I've been a big reader recently, so I will add both of those to list. What a great opportunity you had to interview them, and I'm still hoping to do a reunion show of my own. There's so many good shows out there to do a reunion show with, but it's always also so overwhelming and daunting. I always wonder, like, how can I get everyone, even just 2 or 3 people? But that's exciting that you got that to happen. So what do you hope people will take away from all of the content on your site on Beltline to Broadway? What do you hope people will take away when they watch your content, read your content, listen to it?
Oh gosh. Well, of course I want them to be entertained. I think so much of what we do is entertain people. But I feel like over the pandemic, I realized that what I was doing was kind of transcended what I initially had planned. I thought I was going to go to theater. I was going to write about theater. I was going to interview people. It was going to be great. But when theater shut down, several of our news outlets here also shut down and didn't cover. I mean, there was no theater to cover. And so they weren't covering anything. And because I had the podcast already and I had all of these channels already in place, like, well, okay, we're going to take it online and we're going to just talk to people. And so for the first 2 weeks of the pandemic, I was talking to people every day, and I thought this will be like 2 weeks and then we'll go back to life as normal. And that was over 14 months ago now. And I don't go on every day, but we go on several times a week and have hosted about 300 live chats and discussions. We're about to do our 100th episode of the podcast. And what I was told during the pandemic is that the show and these live chats were bringing our theater community together. And so for me, I felt like, okay, I'm not just entertaining, I'm somehow building community. And so I've taken that very much to heart. I think that's what we've done. I don't know.
I think that's so special. You are doing something so incredible with the platform, and I love that you've created all that. I mean, that's special, and I can't believe that 100 episodes of wow, 300 episodes. Wow, that's crazy. It's crazy. A lot.
It's crazy. And then I was thinking about today. So after George Floyd, this is really interesting, but after George Floyd was murdered, that week, so the next day, the Baby Shark girl, she lives here in Raleigh, the one who sings the song Baby Shark, she lives here. And so I was supposed to interview her, and I was like, this horrible thing has just happened. I still want to honor her time and her commitment and interview her, but I also want to pivot and have some conversations about racism. And it was really interesting because people were like, okay, you need to stop talking. But I was like, the whole platform is built around conversation. We should stop talking now when the conversation is really important. And so Juan Isler, who's a local actor, I said, Juan, I think we can have some conversations around racism in the theater, racism in the arts. And so he started hosting those. And that has been truly, I don't want to say a legacy, but it's become really what our platform has become known for, where people can have candid conversations, and it's really interesting. So sadly, the work continues, and those conversations are still necessary. So we're still having them, but it's incredible to look back on the past year and all the amazing and sad and poignant and delightful conversations we've had on this platform.
Well, and you mentioned that about with racism in the industry, and you mentioned about all of what you were doing with it. I want to talk about which is great. You've put a big focus on your platform of diversity and serving the BIPOC community. How important is this for you, and how can we continue to amplify voices? I know for people of color. I know also, and I think that's what you were talking about earlier. You created a series called Torn as well. that you
Yes.
as well, which I know deals with racism. So, let's, tell me about all that.
So, many years ago, so I'm going to backtrack a little bit, because many years ago, the YWCA here had this amazing program called Study Circles, and it was to bridge the achievement gap between Black and white students in some of our schools. And my son was going to a magnet school at the time, very diverse student body. And so they had this 6-week study circle program, and it brought together parents from a variety of backgrounds to really discuss what we have in common, what our differences, and how can we help our children. And it was the first time in my adult life that I ever had a conversation about racism, at least an open conversation about racism with a diverse group of people. And we all became very close. We all became very good friends. And so after George Floyd was murdered, I had called Juan and I said, I want to do that study circle concept, except do it online and have diverse panels, having these amazing conversations, and working through some of the issues and at least listening to each other. And so that's kind of how it was born. We had a lot of theaters come to us. And so we had a lot of producing artistic directors who on, because they wanted to hear what a lot of the actors were saying. And so it's been this wonderful kind of melting pot of conversation. I think with whether we're talking about BIPOC artists or artists living with disabilities or artists that are outside the white male or white female persona, I think the way to support them is to listen to them, to ask them what they need and to listen to them. And that's what I've come to learn is by just talking and listening and asking people how you can best serve them, how you can best serve that community. They will tell you, and they will be very open with you. If your heart's in the right place, you don't have to worry about stumbling over your words, because that will come through. And that's what we found on TORN. TORN stands for Theater on Racist Negativity. It's a term that Juan came up with right at the beginning, and it's something that's stuck. They'll celebrate their year anniversary, their episode they're going to do next Thursday. So I hope everyone will tune in. Hopefully we'll have the first panel back that we had after George Floyd was murdered a year ago. We'll have the same panel back. But I think just listening to people, asking people what they need, asking how you can serve the community, not just during February or Black History Month or National Disability Month or Autism Awareness Month, but making it part of your canon year round. I think it is the way to go.
I agree that it is. That's very important to always, do your part and support them. And I love what you're doing with everything. I mean, it is vital and it is making a difference. And I know that so many people have been impacted in such a positive way because of what you're doing with all of that. And you're changing minds, you're changing thoughts. And, we all have to do better, especially as you said, both of us being, Caucasian, being white, we have, that responsibility to do better and to be as, to do our part to listen and to help where we can to. And I think it's wonderful, really what you're doing. And I look forward, I hope everyone will tune in next week for your year anniversary of TORN, because that sounds like it'll be a great chat.
I hope so. I think, all of the conversations have been raw and candid. They're not scripted, never quite sure what is going to come out of the conversations, but Juan has become a wonderful friend. He's actually, we're moving into becoming a nonprofit. Beltline to Broadway is now becoming a nonprofit, and Juan is actually the chairman of our board. He and I will also, I don't think this is a secret anymore, but he and I will receive the Raleigh Medal of the Arts, which is the highest art honor our city gives, in a couple weeks. So it's a very exciting time
Yeah.
for us.
It's very exciting, and it's funny. You keep touching on things that I want to mention, which I love. You mentioned him being the chairman of the board. I understand you, and I was reading that you're working on getting Beltline to Broadway to become a 501c. I think I'm saying that right. To become sort of a foundation, right? A charity. Where did the idea come from with this? And what have been some rewards of this process? And are there some challenges that maybe you didn't anticipate that have been interesting in this road to becoming a 501c?
Well, yeah, there's a lot that's really interesting. So when I started, I was pretty much by myself. I started RDU On Stage, was a sole proprietor. That's kind of how it was set up. My friend Kim, who I've known for a long time, she was writing reviews, and it was just she and I. But when the pandemic hit and our audience grew exponentially very quickly, and our social media presence, I mean, we went from, so our live chats are done very much like yours on StreamYard, on YouTube, and on Facebook. And so our Facebook audience just grew from like, I don't know, 500 to 600 people to 1,800 people overnight. And it became very clear to me that we were not only talking about theater, but we were providing a community service. And so it became much more about community than theater criticism. So it started like just, I'm an arts journalist, we're going to do theater criticism, this is what we do. But during the pandemic, the role became different, and my role, I became very much embedded in the community. I like to say the community got all up in my business. In fact, at one point I was working all the time, and I kind of said to some of the actors, if you want me to do this every day, you're going to have to step up and help, and you're going to have to do interviews yourself. And so some of them did. We had these wonderful actors. A friend of mine was doing some West End interviews. Another friend of mine was doing local interviews. And so it was really fun to engage people. But as that happened, it was like, okay, if we're going to be this community-based hub, then maybe we need to explore nonprofit, explore grant opportunities, explore some other avenues. And so that's kind of where the 501c3 came from. It's a process. Anybody who has set up a nonprofit knows it's not about you anymore. It's about the mission of the organization. It's about the longevity of the organization. So long after I'm gone, hopefully this organization is going to still be here. And it's about laying the groundwork for that. So it's a little daunting, but I like to say I don't have to go it alone anymore. I have now a board of directors that's tremendously supportive, and most of these people have been with Beltline to Broadway or RDU On Stage from the beginning of that business. And so now they're just kind of coming along with me on this journey. The grant process is really interesting. So that's been challenging, figuring out how the grant process works. But I think as arts journalism evolves as a whole, more and more outlets like mine will turn to the nonprofit model, because I think it kind of makes sense. Yeah. If you're going to be a community-based hub, New York Times still has theater critics, but a lot of your local papers, your regional papers, the arts coverage is shrinking. And so more and more outlets like yours, like mine, where people get news, entertainment news, pop
Right.
culture news, theater news. So
Yeah.
it's interesting. But yeah, the 501c3 process, it's interesting.
I bet 501c. That's what it was. I said 501c, 501c. Yeah, I can imagine it must be so interesting. I think that's wonderful that you are creating Beltline to Broadway into a 501c. I mean, I'm really excited for you, and that you have such a great team behind you. You've got a great board of directors, and I feel like, and I'm sure you know this, it will open so many more doors and opportunities for you for Beltline to Broadway. I'm really excited to see what the future holds for you, because I think it's opened so many opportunities, not just locally, like where you are, but I think also, nationally as well. So I'm really excited to see what comes of that.
I hope so. We'll see. It's interesting. It just shifts the focus a little bit. Plus,
Yeah.
we don't have a lot of, I mean, when you talk about serving BIPOC artists, so here's something else I've realized over the course. There is no degree in arts journalism. I went to school for journalism, but my degree, I don't think we ever wrote a theater review or an arts review in my classes, in my journalism classes. We learned about public relations, we learned about advertising, but this is a very specific niche, what we do. And so I think to have a place where emerging artists from all walks of life, from all different backgrounds, from all different lived experiences, giving them a platform where they can develop their skills as a writer and publish their work is invaluable. So that's
Yeah.
something we're doing and what I hope to continue to do.
Well, good. And I cannot wait to see what you continue to do with all of it. So that'll be very exciting. So I know this is going to be a hard question, because it's a hard question when people ask me, but I am curious, what has been your favorite interview you have done since you created the platform?
Oh my gosh. There are a lot of memorable interviews. The one that always sticks out to me, which was kind of my first big celebrity interview, Kristen Chenoweth. I am a big fan of hers. And I had it in my head like everybody, when you're a fan of somebody, you have it in your head what you think someone's going to be like or what you want them to be like. And she was not only what I wanted her to be like, she exceeded every expectation. She was warm and open and gracious and just so positive and normal. It was like chatting with a best friend. So I always point to that. And it was the first interview where I thought, I may be onto something here. It was the first big interview that I had done for Broadway World, and really the first time in my career that I thought, oh, this is more than just me going to the theater and seeing a show and writing about it. This is bigger. And so to me, it was a real turning point. During the pandemic, I always talk about this, but like I told you at the beginning, I don't really get starstruck too often. Even on that Kristen Chenoweth interview, I kept it together really well until the end, when I didn't. But for the most part, I kept it together. But at the very beginning of the pandemic, one of the local theaters here had reached out to me and said, Robert Newman was supposed to be in this play, Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime, at Cape Fear Regional, and they wanted me to interview him. And Robert Newman was Josh Lewis on Guiding Light, which I watched for about 10 years. And during the entire 10 years that I watched, he was Josh Lewis. So the first time he emailed me, I was like, oh, Josh Lewis has my email. So another kind of moment that I remember. But there are a lot of wonderful interviews, wonderful moments, wonderful memories and experiences. But those are two that stick.
I bet Kristen Chenoweth, though, she's a dream of mine. So that's, oh.
She always wears these gloves. She has some sort of some sort of condition. She always wears these gloves. And so she invited me to come and meet her backstage. So I had done this interview. This interview was remote. She was in New York or California, or wherever she was, and I was here. I wasn't completely convinced the interview was going to happen until about 20 minutes before it did happen. And her publicist called me and said, I have Kristen on the phone. And I was like, oh, this is happening right now. I was like, this is happening right now. She was walking under pup. And so she'd stop and she'd be like, oh, hold on, I have to train Thunder. I was like, she's a very normal person. So she invited me backstage to her concert, which is what I was interviewing her for. And she took my hands, and my husband was standing behind her. So she took my hands with these like furry glove things she wears. And she said, girl, you get me. You got me. I read that article 3 times. And I'm looking at my husband. My husband's like, don't cry. Like, can you save it? Don't cry right now. Please don't cry. They're taking pictures of you. And so to this day, we kind of tease that Kristen is my BFF because she held my hands and told me that I got her. But she was amazing. She was just an amazing interview.
That is an amazing interview. And oh, hold on. I'm starting to get feedback on my end. Hold on.
Uh-oh. If you need me to put in my headphones, I surely can.
I think we're good now. We have there's feedback sometimes, and I never understand why. Are you hearing feedback on the end?
I'm not hearing feedback. I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay. Yes, this StreamYard has been weird recently. I've had some interviews where I've done both live and recording, and randomly I'll start hearing myself double, and it's been weird. So, we both are theater fans, and I'm very excited for the return of theater. I want to know, what show are you most looking forward to upon Broadway's return?
Oh my gosh. You know what I love in the theater? So I'm really looking forward to coming back to New York and seeing shows. There's a lot of shows I'm dying to see, some that I'm dying to see again. But my favorite part of going to the theater, I really think, is the lobby conversation kind of at intermission, where everybody is just abuzz of what they've just seen, and they're anticipating the second act, and everybody's usually in a great mood. Everybody's on this high, all our heartbeats have just gone in sync. And so I feel like these lobby conversations are what I miss the most. It's typically where I get to see a lot of friends and artists here locally. And so I'm really looking forward to that. I'm just looking forward to live, to anything live, because there's nothing like it. There's just nothing like it. And I always say it's like my sanctuary, it's my safe space, it's my church. I'm not a very religious person. I'm probably more spiritual than religious. But when I go to the theater, it is my sanctuary, because it is the one in my life I am not multitasking. I am not on my phone. I am completely present in that moment and fixated on whatever has happening in front of me. And there's nothing going on outside. There's no laundry that has to be changed. There's no kids bothering me. It's just, I'm completely present in that moment. And for me, that's what theater is and does for me, grounds me. And so I just can't wait to get back to that. So we've had some theater here. So I've seen a couple of shows here, but it's been social distanced. It's been masks. It's kind of awkward because people are afraid of getting close proximity together. But I kind of look forward to the day when everybody's vaccinated and we can be shoved into that little cramped space and all just experience that joy. Even if the play isn't happy, there's a joy and a high that comes from going to the theater. I know you know that because you feel the same way.
I feel 100% the same way. I know exactly what you're talking about. I do feel that same way, and I know exactly what you mean. It's undescribable, and the thing is my happy place. It's a sanctuary. I saw my first live performance on Saturday here at the Green Room 42. It was the first time in 14 months I've seen something. I've said to people at this point, I'd sit and watch paint dry. So I cannot wait to be back in the theater and watch actual live performance.
Absolutely. Now, I will say I'm not a big fan of anything on screen at this point, except I will say I did see In the Heights on Mother's Day, and I would say everyone run, don't walk, buy your tickets, go see it on the big screen. It's incredible. It's one of the few movie musicals that has given me that same just joy fest that the theater does.
I know. I'm looking forward to seeing that. I can't wait. So you are constantly growing. What advice do you have for others who might be new or are currently running platforms, blogs, website, and are trying to grow, but they're still small or still on the smaller end? What advice would you have for them in growing their platform, blog, website?
I think I would say integrity matters. Rye, from being in this, there are times where just because of the nature of what we do, we find out information about people, or through our research, we find out kind of those hidden skeletons. And it would be very easy to say, I'm going to do a big expose on this. And sure, you'll get followers, you'll get hits, you'll get likes, whatever, but it won't be lasting. I think, just treating people as you want to be treated, being mindful that this is entertainment. So not a whole lot of what we uncover is breaking news. I mean, breaking news is Hadestown is going to open 2 weeks earlier than everybody else. We need to break the news that somebody's been arrested or whatever. We can. I don't know, when people come on my platform, and I feel like you're much the same, right? I want them to feel like I'm not out to get them. I'm not out to trap them. I am out to celebrate them and their craft and this art form that I love so much. And so I think going into interviews that way, trying to tell a story in the most positive light you can, being truthful to yourself, I think is important. But integrity matters. I think being honest, being truthful, being mindful that as big as a person is or as small as a person is, in or wherever they are in their career or their career path, they're people first. And I think just treating people like humans and with kindness and with compassion is key.
I agree. I could not agree more with any of that. I mean, really, that's why I do what I do and why you do what you do. I think that is really important and such great advice, really. And as you said, it's tough because that expose stuff, that salacious stuff, as I say, it will get the hits, it will get the likes, but as you said, it won't last. And yeah, breaking news such as, Hadestown opening 2 weeks early and exciting things like that, celebrating joy in life and everything is.
I think Celebrating, especially now. I mean, theaters have been closed. Artists have not been working. People haven't been getting paychecks. People haven't had insurance coverage. I mean, this has been a really dark time. And so as theaters do reopen, I think it's important to celebrate all of the um, people going back to work, to celebrate all the art. I'm not sure that this is a great time to write theater criticism even. I struggle with that because I'm not going to like every show that I go to, but I certainly don't want to pan a show right now because right now it's just great that theater's reopening. So I think it's important to be very mindful of the community that you're serving. Maybe that's the best way to say it.
Yeah, mindfulness is very important, especially as we get back into theater, we get back into the return of live theater. And I do wonder about how that theater criticism will change and what it will be like, because as you said, when we first return, and I mean, even for the first year or so, how do you, for me, and I've never been one to criticize shows, even when I would review, I've always felt, I used to perform. I know what it's like to be up there on stage. So it was always so hard for me to criticize, but especially after these last now, 15, 16 months, by the time Broadway opens, it'll be 18, 19 months. How can you criticize something that is, so beautiful, especially not having it for so long? So I wonder what the world of theater criticism will be like, and what the criticism will take on in a new form, so.
I said this on another interview. For me, arts journalism is bigger than theater criticism. Mm-hmm. And what my mentor, I had a wonderful mentor, Roy Dix, who is local to Raleigh. He was our theater critic at the News and Observer, our publication here in Raleigh, for 24 years, wrote over 1,200 reviews. Mm-hmm. And what he taught me when I first started is the role of theater critic kind of changes and morphs. And right now, the way I look at the role of arts journalist and the way I've looked at it throughout this pandemic is more documentarian. We are documenting this crazy pandemic time, with theater shutting down, with all of the effects that it's had, this whole uprising in we see white American theater movement, we're kind of the documentarians, we're the historians right now. We're the ones keeping that record so that people looking back on this time will know what happened collectively, not just theater by theater, but they'll have a space to view that. And I think as theaters reopen, our role will be much the same, documenting what this looks like, what, how are people staying accountable? What kind of shows are we seeing? How has COVID affected the type of stories we're going to see on stage? It'll be really interesting to see.
Yes, it will. And I look forward to the stories that we will see, because I do think from COVID, the work that will come out, I'm looking forward to. I think it will be exciting, it will be thrilling, it will be powerful. I think it'll be everything mixed into one, upsetting and triggering, but fun and great. And I think COVID will have brought out so many great playmakers and playwriters, and really looking forward to the work that comes from this to really see. Yeah. So
and people making their Broadway debuts. I mean, how exciting is that? A lot of the shows which didn't have a chance to open are going to open now. And so I'm very excited to see that too.
I am too. I'm really excited. I'm looking forward to that. So as we get ready to finish up here, where can we keep up with you? Where can we follow you? What are some of your platforms that we can keep up with you?
Well, on the website, it's beltlinetobroadway.org. So you can, of course, visit us online. On Facebook and Instagram, it's at Beltline to Broadway. And on Twitter, it's Beltline to B-Way, because Broadway was too long. So it's Beltline to B-Way on Twitter. But yeah, people can follow us, engage with us, and see my ridiculous reels on Instagram, but yes.
Oh, reels are, I'm just learning reels. They are becoming they're very interesting. I'm having a lot of fun with them.
It's fun and terrifying all at the same time.
It is. And it's weird what sticks and what doesn't and what works and what doesn't. And my first one, I'm a big music buff. And so like my first one I did of like an 80s song I was jamming out to, and it got like over like, what do we got? 2,000 something views. And then like I posted another one. It's very interesting. It's very weird and it's great reach, but also
there's no rhyme or reason to it. There's no, one night I was drawing a bath and I poured in like the Dr. Teal's because, I was like, okay, it's a Dr. Teal's kind of night. And so I was pouring in it, and it's like a 10-second video. I think it got 2,000 views. I was like, why do people find this interesting? I don't understand. But then the ones that I really find interesting, like 30 people watch. So I don't know. There's no rhyme or reason to it. The one thing I am enjoying is because we do have so many different theaters here in this area, I'm using the reels to do field trip Fridays and introduce people to various theaters that they may not know about. And so we've done the Durham Performing Arts Center. We've done Raleigh Little Theater. And so trying to put some fun facts with some video, and those seem to be really popular. So if you are coming to Raleigh, Durham, and you want to know what theaters we have here, check out the Instagram. Or on our Instagram, we have the guide section, and you can see all the theaters that we have here.
Wow, that's very interesting.
Yeah.
I'll have to check that out. And for those of you watching, you can keep up with me. Follow me across social media at Rye_Myers on Instagram and Twitter. And I'm on Facebook at Official Rye Myers. And as a reminder, if you are so inclined, I'd love if you consider helping support the platform, continue to help me do what I do. You can go to ridenewsco.com/donate. Or you can scan this nifty little QR code right here as well. Lauren, thank you so much for
arts journalism.
Yes, support arts journalism and art journalists. And Lauren, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me. I loved learning so much about you and what you do in Beltline to Broadway. And I'm just so honored and thrilled that we are part of the same group, Broadway Makers Alliance. We've met each other, know each other, and just how supportive you are of me, vice versa, and how just supportive you are of everyone and how open you are. It really, it says a lot.
Oh, well, thank you. And thank you for what you do. I can't wait to come to New York and meet you in person. We'll have to go see a show.
Yes, we will. Yes, we will. I cannot wait for that. So, well, thank you so much, Lauren.
Thank you.